I am fortunate, pleased, and honored on behalf of DRBU to introduce our 2021 Commencement keynote speaker, the Venerable Bhikshuni, Professor Karma Lekshe Tsomo. Venerable Lekshe is a longtime friend of DRBA and DRBU. Although her very full and active life has not allowed for our frequent contact with Venerable Lekshe, DRBA monastics have had opportunities to meet with her at the annual Western Buddhist monastic conferences, of which she is one of the founding members, and several of which were hosted by CDDB and City of Dharma Realm. Introducing her is both an easy and difficult assignment. Easy because Venerable Lekshe is recognized throughout the contemporary Buddhist world as a foremost scholar, practitioner, teacher, author, social and environmental activist, and philanthropist. And so she needs no introduction. But if you do not already recognize her, all you need to do is Google her name, and you will find pages and pages describing her life's work and accomplishments. Introducing her is difficult in that a thorough introduction that includes all of her many achievements would take more than a few minutes. And so very briefly, Professor Karma Lekshe Tsomo was fully ordained in 1982 in Korea. She studied for 15 years at the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives and the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics in Dharamshala, India, for 15 years. She earned her BA in Oriental Languages at UC Berkeley and 2 masters, one in Asian religions and one in Asian studies, as well as a PhD in comparative philosophy at the University of Hawaii. Professor Karma Lekshe Tsomo has been a full faculty member of the University of San Diego since the year 2000. Her teaching style is very similar to DRBU's. Beyond that, she is the founder of Shakya Dita International Association of Buddhist Women, founding director of Jamyang Foundation, which supports women and girls' education and professional training in the Himalayan region and in Bangladesh. She is a prolific author of popular and scholarly Buddhist publications, mostly on the topics of women in Buddhism, as well as in death and dying. In 2020, she received the Independent Publishers Book Award in Religion for her publication, Buddhist Feminisms and Femininities. And so, without further ado, let us welcome Venerable Bhikshuni, Professor Karma Lekshe Tsomo. Hello.
Aloha, everyone. Namaste and Tashi Dele. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Venerable, for your generous introduction. So kind. I'm so honored to be here at this graduation. As you said, we have a long-standing connection going back to, actually 1975. And meeting Master Shanghai in 1981, and as you mentioned, the conferences. So I would like to begin with a short verse in Tibetan language, which I will also translate. And the main thrust of the verse is to check our motivation, to set our intention, which is what we like to do before every action, especially a Dharma action, to check up, why are we doing this? What is our motivation? So I will say this verse. Sangye chidang suki chognama Changchu baru dagni kyapsuchi Dagi jinso gi pesanam ki Dharma Pinche Sangye Tuparsho. We go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may we achieve the state of perfect awakening in order to liberate all sentient beings from suffering. So with that reminder, I would like to say it's difficult to even conceive of saying something unique and valuable after all the articulate expressions from the heart of so many wonderful students and faculty. I would just, and I'm competing here with the birds. I'm coming to you from the North Shore of Oahu, probably about 5,000 miles away. And the birds are singing sweetly and greeting and saying congratulations to all of you graduates. So I think it's important to set our intentions before each action, before each day, and now for the rest of our lives. We live in perilous times, politically, socially, economically, environmentally. It sometimes feels quite overwhelming. Recently, I saw a cartoon. There were two dogs talking, and one said, I heard that the world is going to the dogs, and they were quite excited about that. So it was quite cute. So by some measures, the world situation is getting better, and by other measures, it's getting worse. Still, overall, we can't deny that the world's in something of a mess. And this is the perilous time that we live in. And for you graduates, I can only imagine you now venturing out into a very unpredictable world. What can we do? Well, fortunately, we have the Buddha's teachings to guide us in these perilous times. You've all been so fortunate to spend time at Dharma Realm Buddhist University and City of 10,000 Buddhas, and you have so much knowledge and cultivation now to meet these challenging times. The Buddha actually was really wise about all of this. His teachings prepare us for exactly these kinds of disasters that we face today. He taught us dukkha. Why are we surprised when we run into sufferings and dissatisfactions? I mean, that's life. That's being trapped in the wheel of samsara. Why get too upset about it? We just recognize, oh, yeah, the Buddha was right. He taught that everything is anitya, unpredictable, impermanent, fleeting. And this is also very helpful advice for the present time. Now people are starting to wear masks or starting not to wear masks. And, everything's changing day by day. Even the advice we get from the doctors, from the government, it's impermanent. So, and then the teaching on no self, I think, is also anatma, is so valuable in this time. It reminds us that we're insubstantial. And this is a good reminder too, so that we hopefully don't cling so tightly to all of our preconceptions, especially the preconception of the self, right? We can say misconceptions, right? So with all of these tools in hand, all of this Dharma wisdom, and of course the cultivation that helps us to integrate these teachings in our mind stream, that's so important. Leaving the teachings in the books on the shelf doesn't help too much. It's inspiring, but what really transforms our lives and our world is when we try to put these into practice. And now we have this great opportunity for all the suffering and hardship that people are experiencing, it's also, in a sense, an amazing opportunity to verify and to go forward, to go further with the Buddha's teachings. So we can, in a sense, in the Mahayana tradition, distill it down into wisdom and compassion, right? We have the wisdom of the Buddha to help deal with all of these catastrophes. And we also have these tools, this prajna, this wisdom and understanding to deconstruct the self and understand the true nature of ourselves and all phenomena. Yeah, I mean, on a day-to-day level, right? And this is immensely helpful. We can use our own Dharma wisdom. Now you've studied so well for years, and you've presumably passed the exams, right? So now we take this Dharma wisdom into the world. Every time we need to make a decision, we have guidelines to help us make these decisions. We have a spiritual community that we can also consult with to help us make these really tough decisions sometimes, right? You'll see what I mean when you get out there in the real world. Compassion also is so valuable, okay? So wisdom helps us to overcome our self-grasping. Our grasping at ourselves as being so ever so important, so much more important than anyone else, right? We can relax with that, open some space and allow that, we don't have to cling so tightly to the self, which releases tremendous energy that we can use for other things. And this is paired with the relaxing the self-grasp, the self-cherishing attitude. Okay, so this is the compassion piece. By generating compassion to, the lovely song that Chuan sang, it's so lovely that we can develop compassion. Not only pray to some ideal outside ourselves, but actually internalize compassion, become compassion. We can realize that we are just one of many sentient beings, one of coming up to 8 billion human beings, not to mention the billions and billions and billions of animals and other sentient beings. And this, again, relaxing our obsession with the self releases so much energy that we can use for good in the world. So by overcoming this obsession with self, we then can use that energy to help others in small ways and large ways. See? So what advice do I have? I can just offer a few little bits and pieces that I hope, some tips for graduating students that I hope might be useful. One is, of course, as so many have expressed, gratitude. Gratitude for all of the privileges and advantages and joys and opportunities that we have had and still have. It's been scientifically proven that gratitude is one of the key factors in keeping a happy heart. So being thankful actually brings joy to our heart. And when we have joy in our heart, of course, we express that joy in everyday life, in every action. And that, of course, is a great benefit to those around us many are trapped in suffering. And just a smile can really help brighten their day. So each one of us, I think the important thing is to do our best. Okay, do our best. And of course, recognize that everyone is doing their best under the circumstances, right? Everybody is facing different circumstances, and some of them are facing incredible hardships. The children today, it's unimaginable how difficult it must be for the children trying to learn online and the parents trying to juggle 3 jobs as teacher, as parent, and also trying to make a living. Imagine how difficult that can be. So everyone is doing their best under the circumstances. For this, I think one important thing to remember is to let go of our illusions of perfection. We all want to do our best, but sometimes we're striving for an ideal that is difficult for an ordinary being to embody. Only a perfectly awakened Buddha is completely perfect, right? Meanwhile, on the path, we have imperfections. And I think this has been one side effect, silver linings, right? One silver lining of the pandemic is that we've all had to recognize our limitations. We've had to get content with imperfection. Our papers are not as good as we might have hoped. You know, our responses to difficult situations may not have been as skillful as we had hoped. But we can be comfortable nonetheless, right? We can be content. Remember, the Buddha said that contentment is the greatest wealth. And he wasn't talking just about material things. Of course, there's a great contentment here. I'm living off the grid and looking out over, you know, the landscape and living the simple life and being content. But there's also kind of contentment that comes from recognizing that we are doing our best under the circumstances. And that's the best we can do for now. So I hope this will help. At the same time, we can also recognize that we have infinite potential. I mean, seriously, infinite potential. The Buddha made that pretty clear. We have the potential for perfect awakening. And so we can learn much more than we think we can learn. They say we only use about 3% of our brains, but we could really use much more. And so we can learn as much as we want to learn. Maybe we have to do it in measured steps. Sometimes I've tried reading a book and I can't make sense of it, but I come back to it a year later and read it from cover to cover. Yeah, quite amazing. I must say where I'm coming from, actually. Isn't it the trend now to recognize your social location? So I have to say I'm American. I was born in the United States during the Second World War. And the gift that my parents gave me was, our family name was Zen, spelled Zenn. But because I had this name, the kids at school would tease me about being a Zen Buddhist, and I had to figure out what it was. And recently I found a copy of the very first book that I read, which is this, The Way of Zen by Alan Watts, and also Zen Buddhism by D.T. Suzuki. So at the age of 11, I was fortunate enough to set out on the path of Dharma. So it was not an easy path, because in those days there were no monasteries. If there were teachers around in the United States, I certainly didn't encounter them. I had to go to Japan when I was 19 to try to, well, I went to go surfing actually. But once the boat landed in Yokohama, and after, it started to snow, then I found a monastery, but I didn't find a teacher. So it was a long path to finally find qualified teachers and circumstances where I could study further. And I'm so very grateful for that. What I learned through all of this is that we really can learn as much as we wish to learn. Again, setting our motivation. We can learn as many languages as we want. There's a time when people thought if you learn more than one language, it would get you confused. But now they've found that learning more than one language actually helps to make our minds more flexible. People who are bilingual are able to code switch very easily. And that's a tremendous asset in life, to be able to adapt to circumstances, in addition to opening our minds to other worlds of ways of thinking, ways of acting in the world, and of course, opening the treasure trove of the Buddhist teachings in different languages. So there's much more that we can learn, but there's also much more that we can do in the world. Now that you're equipped with all of this knowledge and all of these skills, when we go out into the world, we have the potential to do tremendous things, tremendous good in the world. Now, this will be a different path for each person. We don't need to put people into little cubbies and make everybody do the same thing. When I was, studying in the early days, the best option was to be a monk or a nun. It was kind of the ultimate. It was kind of the only real thing to do. If you're really keen on Buddhism, then you'd naturally want to be a monastic. Well, over the years, I think we've come to recognize that people can be very good Dharma teachers, even as lay people, as long as they keep the precepts, right? So we can choose our path to be a layperson or a monastic, to work in the monastery, to work in the world. We can do much more than we imagine. In fact, we're already doing so much. We change the world with every thought, every word, every action that we do. Imagine, all actions of body, speech, and mind, each has a ripple effect that not only changes our mind, leaves imprints on our consciousness, our stream of consciousness, but also ripples out into all sentient beings and the whole planet, right? Each plastic bottle we buy and discard, we don't do that, right? It has an effect on the world, right? We can't ignore our power to have an effect in the world. And let's hope that it's beneficial. Now, for example, sometimes they say, I'm getting too old. I cannot do anymore. I've done what I have to do. But actually, we can do this anytime. It's never too late. And when I think about this, it's never too late to help transform the world. Or as we said in the 60s, save the world, right? I'll never give up. I think of one of my own teachers, who is Shaoyun Fashi, who was a nun originally from China, the first monastic to teach at a university in Taiwan. Yeah, a woman, right? And later, at the age of 76, set out to start the first Buddhist university in Taiwan. Okay, Huafan University, which is still one of the major universities in Taiwan. But imagine beginning such a project at the age of 76. I'm 76 now myself. And it's mind-blowing to imagine that someone could undertake something so monumental and in the end be successful at it. So a long story, but really just the very concept that one person, as Gandhi said, can change the world. And definitely each one of you can. Now, I mentioned that my family name was Zen, and that was a birthright. I feel that I realize now what a gift it was to have a name that took me directly to the Buddha Dharma. Many people struggle even to get there, even to make contact, but we create imprints that then enable us to make links with the Dharma again in the future. So that's very important, to make these connections, right? Make connections with teachers, with texts that will ripen in the future. There was even a story in Tibet about a monk who tripped a lama. Lama means teacher, right? And he went to see a lama teach, and he wanted to make a connection, and he actually stuck out his foot and tripped him. And so they say, make a connection, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but I'll make a connection because these connections will bear fruit in the future. It's just a story, but so it took me many years to find a teacher, and even longer to find a monastery, because in those days, I'm talking back in the 60s, it was very difficult to find a monastery for women. In the end, I had to create my own. In Dharamsala, there was only one monastery at the time, and it was full. So I found some old mud huts in the forest, and we began Jamyang Chilling, which today has about 150 nuns, and produced some of the first scholars of philosophy, geshes, in the Tibetan tradition ever in history. Now, I don't take credit for any of that, but I'm glad that I could help kickstart the nuns' education. So I had a little obstacle, I could say. I was bitten by a snake in 1989. I was looking for land because we were being evicted from those mud huts in the forest. And I needed a place where the nuns could continue to live and study. So while walking in the forest, I apparently was bitten by a poisonous viper. I say apparently because I didn't see the snake. But later, the doctors, the experts who examined me, this is a reconstructed arm. And I'm lucky to have it. When they took me to Delhi after 8 days to get some proper medical treatment, they were going to amputate my arm. And as it happened, they decided I was too serious to operate, that I would die and they might get blamed for it. So they just left me lying there, thinking I was definitely going to die. But I fooled them. And after 2 weeks, I regained consciousness and somehow managed to survive that snake bite. So 3 months in the hospital, another year to learn to use my arm again. And I'm so grateful that I managed to survive that experience. And there were many takeaways, many lessons that I learned from that experience. First of all, of course, was impermanence. Here I'd been studying about impermanence, studying the texts. I could recite the definitions. We debate philosophy in Dharamsala 6 hours a day. So we have very precise definitions for all these terms. And I was familiar with the concept of impermanence, but wow, there's nothing like facing death moment to moment for 3 months, not knowing from one day to the next whether you'll be alive tomorrow. To really bring home that lesson in impermanence. So that was the first thing. Suffering, of course. You're in incredible, intolerable pain from morning to night and through the night. So the Buddha's teachings on dukkha are no longer merely theoretical. It's a first-hand reality. And that experience also, I think, is very valuable. Of course, I wouldn't wish a snake bite on anyone. And hopefully everyone will manage to avoid pain in life. But that's a bit unrealistic. And we can benefit tremendously by recognizing that dukkha is a reality in life when we're younger, instead of waiting until old age when it becomes very obvious, with arthritis and every step, is painful and so on. When we're young, if we recognize the reality of dukkha, we can do something to mitigate the circumstances. By understanding it, we can practice in ways that will help us to avoid suffering in the future, hopefully through gaining liberation. Okay. I also learned a great deal about my own practice, because here, I started doing what I thought was meditation when I was a kid. I'm not sure I was really meditating. I think I was just mental wandering, but I had been meditating for many, many years. And yet, when you're in tremendous pain, facing death moment to moment, stuck in a hospital. I guess I was lucky to be in a hospital at long last, with my arm still attached. That was fortunate. But what I learned was that focusing the mind is not so difficult when you're well fed, you're in a nice, comfortable environment, you have a nice, comfy cushion, and nice Dharma friends surrounding you. Meditation is a joy. In fact, it's easy. It can be quite easy, but it's quite a different thing to focus one's mind when you're in agony, right? You're in torture, and you're in a circumstance where it's totally unpredictable. Even getting a glass of water in that hospital took, as they say, an act of God. And you can lean on the buzzer all day and nobody shows up, right? So keeping one's mind focused takes practice. It takes a lot more meditation experience than I recognized. Not only the pain, but they give you drugs. They give you mind-altering substances like, all kinds of painkillers and things like that, which cloud the mind. So on a good day, an ordinary day, our minds can be quite clear. If we put our close attention to it, we can focus, right? But when you're in a hospital and they're giving you a whole handful of pills you don't even know what's in. One day I said, "Oh, what are these?" They said, "Oh, no problem. It is only Valium." I said, "Valium? Valium's bad for the mind." And then I told them I didn't want to take it, and that helped to clear up the mind a bit, right? Still, okay, so that was another challenge, something I learned from this experience. The other thing that I learned was the kindness of strangers. I was at that time, our nuns were very young. They didn't speak Tibetan, they didn't speak English. We were communicating in a few words of Hindi, but it was still very nice to have them in the room. Indian hospital rooms, not hotel, hospital rooms, you're allowed to have your family and friends with you. So the nuns would sit and chant and meditate all day. And that was tremendously comforting. But in terms of, medical procedures and so forth, it was not easy. One time I remember they hauled me out of surgery, umpteen surgeries, and they thought I would die. I was all blue and they really had given up hope. And they wheeled me back into the room. And at the foot of the bed were 3 figures. I thought they were angels. Actually, they were angels. They were Indian artists who'd heard the story of the American nun who got bitten by a poisonous snake and was in this hospital. And they walked in off the streets to donate blood to me. Can you imagine? And these were the days before AIDS testing. So I lucked out again on that one because, I was taking transfusions from wherever they could find them. So the kindness of strangers walking in off the street to donate blood to a total stranger, that is incredible. The other boon that I gained from this horrific experience was to awaken to the present moment. And this was actually after I got out of the hospital and somehow managed to get back to the States. After I managed to get out of the hospital in Tijuana, that a well-meaning friend had put me in, details upon request. What was she thinking? I've awakened to the beauty of each present moment. Here I was, alive against all the odds, and every flower, every leaf, every bird chirp was so incredibly beautiful and powerful. I was just delighted. It was kind of like a mini Pure Land, right? So awakening to the present moment. Now, we often think of liberation and awakening as some distant goal. We pray to achieve awakening in order to liberate all beings from suffering. But we can also, and this is important, you've no doubt learned it, but I'm here to restate it, to awaken to the present moment. You see, the past is gone, it's over, it will never come again. The future is not yet to come. It has not occurred yet. It doesn't exist. All that really exists is this very present moment, moment to moment. Got it? And these present moments are fleeting. They're passing by as we speak. And if we do not pay attention, we lose them. We lose those opportunities for awakening, pure awareness, bare attention. We want to wake up to each precious present moment because it will never come again. Right? Not only on the cushion, which we should also do, but also in everyday action, moment to moment. Respectful listening, you see, is a good practice for being in the present moment, paying careful attention to our partners, our children, our parents, our teachers, our friends, total strangers, the homeless. Stop and listen. Each one has a story to tell. You can really make their day if you just take a few minutes to listen, right? So these lessons were really important for me. The whole experience, which could be considered the disaster of a lifetime, and was in a sense, was also a great gift for which I'm very grateful in the strangest of ways. So we want to ask ourselves, how many sentient beings have we helped today? Sort of the Boy Scout motto, we should do a good deed every day. But the Buddhists might say, how many sentient beings have we helped today? How many have we brought, how much goodness have we brought into the world today? How many lives have we touched today? How many people have we made smile today? These, I think, tips might be useful going out into this crazy world. So in Mahayana Buddhist tradition, we talk about Bodhichitta. And we talk about the wishing Bodhichitta and the engaging Bodhichitta. The wishing Bodhichitta is the aspiration, this fantastic aspiration to achieve the state of perfect awakening in order to liberate all beings from suffering. They say if we generate this incredible thought even once in our lifetime, it makes our whole life worth living. Right? So it's incredibly, it really sets us on the path to awakening, signs us up, right? But then we also need to put it into action. That's the engaging bodhicitta. We want to become more engaged in the world, more compassionate, more open-hearted, more light-hearted. The world is so heavy. People are so depressed and suffering in so many ways. To be open-hearted and light-hearted and bring some humor into the world is maybe one of the best things we can do these days. To be friendly to the poor people behind the cash register or standing on their feet all day, slogging away from hopefully minimum wage. So let's not take ourselves so seriously. We want to lighten up. Lighten up in both ways. We lighten up our hearts, right? Let go of some expectations of ourselves. Appreciate our good qualities. Not bang ourselves over the heads for our failings. And also lighten up the world. Then we'll actually be in a better position to lighten up the world because we ourselves are lighter. With a light heart, we can tread lightly in the world, which of course has environmental implications, right? Treading lightly in the world. Okay, so let's set our good intentions to help awaken ourselves and awaken our world. We have to awaken to the sufferings of the world, because that's what helps us to develop strong compassion for the world. And that increases our capacity to help sentient beings. Now, we could have a whole long conversation about the perils of getting involved in the world. And seriously, if someone is in contemplation, meditation, and study in a monastery or a cave 24/7, it's actually a breach of the Bodhisattva vows to disturb that person, according to the Tibetan lineage of Bodhisattva vows. We don't want to disturb them. They're on a sure course to awakening. For the rest of us, mere mortals, we have no choice but to act in the world. And it's also a great blessing to act in the world and to try to implement these amazing teachings in everyday life, in everyday actions, including difficult situations. So we have to ask ourselves, we can start by handing out sandwiches to the homeless. And this is fantastic. This is great charity work. And then we can also take it to a deeper level, which is to try to change the system. And this is more challenging because going to the streets, signing petitions is easy, and we should do that. I think I spend a greater part of my day signing petitions, but there's also a time for actually going out into the world and helping to transform the lives of the people, figure out why we need to hand them sandwiches. Why do they not have enough to eat? Why do some 30 million children in the United States not have enough to eat? Why? What are we going to do about it? Without getting angry. I hear the Dalai Lama has a new book that says it's okay to get angry. But actually, I learned that it's not okay. So I'm going to have a conversation with him. Critical thinking, right? Okay, so we want to awaken to the sufferings of the world and try to do something about it, and also wake up to the present moment. So I think I have taken a lot of your time, and I'd like to end by offering you all congratulations. I think you're so fortunate, and it's so wonderful that you've been able to complete your studies successfully. And now I want to challenge you. Now that you have this knowledge and these skills, I want to challenge each and every one of you to go out into the world and help make the world a better place. And if I may, I will end with a prayer of dedication. Is that okay? Okay, great. So let's rejoice in all of the meritorious actions we have done today and since beginningless time. The Buddhist view is enormous, it's huge. We rejoice in all of the actions that we have created since beginningless time. And we rejoice in all the actions that everyone, all the virtuous actions, all the wholesome actions that everyone, all sentient beings have done since beginningless time. And since we're in the sacred month, the 4th lunar month of the calendar, Tibetan calendar, also Chinese calendar, and we're even approaching the full moon day that the Buddha achieved awakening, all of our actions of body, speech, and mind are considered 100,000 times more valuable than on any ordinary day. So we generate that joy in all our wholesome actions and the wholesome actions of others. And we dedicate the merit of all these wholesome actions to the welfare of all sentient beings. Mama Sangye Rukyuni Joa Chikyan Malupa Keki Sana By the virtue of all the meritorious deeds that I have done, may I achieve the state of perfect awakening in order to liberate all sentient beings from suffering, leaving not one behind. Thank you.